What's up, and welcome back to the Football House, presented by House Enterprise. Week 5 of college football pick'em, and the crew did all right. The crew did all right. The crew did well. The crew did not so well. It was a combination of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Heading into last week, we're joined by Sam Basil and Cole Hughes today. Gentlemen, first and foremost, how's everyone going? How's everyone doing? And let's recap last week.
I'm doing well, man. Slowly starting to work my way back. I was glad that Kansas pick ended up working out for me. A couple of other things went my way. I feel like I'm doing a bit better in FCS than I have been, but man, like those rivalry games and college game days, like keep killing me. So hopefully this is a good one. So not to be a little spoilery, but our rivalry game and our college game day game is the same one this week. So I have one less spot to mess up. So
yeah, I mean, good to be back. I know I missed last week, so definitely good to be back on the show. I can't believe we're already in week 5. It's kind of crazy how fast the season's flying by. We're getting into October already, which is just absolutely wild. But I had a pretty decent week last week. The Bryan Bulldogs got their first win, the alma mater, so we're happy about that. They lost a lot of tough games to start out the season, but they're finally in the win column, which is good. So, overall good week. Some surprises. I would say USC was kind of surprised. They barely squeaked it out last week. I thought they were going to handle that game pretty well, but apparently not. Still think that they're a legit threat out in the West and could potentially make the college football playoff. Every good team has, down weeks. So hopefully that's what it was for them, and they bounce back this week. So ready to make some picks for this upcoming week.
Yeah, that USC game was really interesting because, obviously I feel like these past 2 years, especially, with everything going on with the Pac-12 right now, with UCLA and USC, leaving for the Big Ten, I think people have been really down on the Pac-12 as of late. And with, Oregon State challenging USC, Washington, creeping their way up the rankings. And, even Oregon after that loss to Ohio State Georgia. I think they're kind of on a little bit of a revenge tour. I think it's going to be really interesting going forward.
Yeah, you have UCLA too. UCLA's been balling out low key. I think this week they actually have Washington, so that should be a really good game. I believe that's a Friday night game. So there's definitely some contenders in the Pac-12. I think USC's on top, but watch out for their rival UCLA, and Washington's also shown that they're capable of potentially taking the Pac-12 too.
We got 4 teams in the top 15 that are from the Pac-12, so pretty
Who's
good. It's USC at 6, Utah at 12, Oregon at 13, and Washington at 15.
Yeah, I mean Oregon's had their loss, but they're in it too. You never know what could happen down the stretch, so it'll definitely it'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
BYU's Pac-12 too, right?
I think they're independent still.
They're independent?
Yeah, they're currently independent. They're actually on their way to the Big 12.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, we covered the USC close game. A couple surprisers. I mean, for me last week, Georgia not covering. Georgia not covering over a Kent State team made me push them down in the top 25, in my opinion, especially with Alabama cruising by Vanderbilt, no problem. I don't judge that they'll still be a top 4 team, let alone a top 2 team, but it definitely questioned my favoritism towards the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I mean, that was surprising, definitely, to say the least. Alabama, they look really good. They're starting to get the wheels rolling. They got a big game this week against Arkansas. That'll be, I think, a good matchup. We'll see what happens there, but they're definitely right now. I still have them behind Georgia, but they're coming up the rail and they're trying to get after it. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. I'm just pulling up the graphics, not loading for me at the moment. So to look at our standings, Cole, you're currently at first place at 17, 11, and 3, followed by myself at 20, 17, and 3. Gilly rounds it out, the top 3 at 18 and 20. Gracie is in 4th, 5, 6, and 1. Zimmer is in 5th, 13, 16, and 2. Clubfoot Jim, 3, 4, and 1. And then Basil, 12 and 17. We're hoping this week you bounce back to 500 and round it out for us.
Yeah, not the worst, not as bad as I thought I'd be, but not as bad as as some of my picks have made me expect myself to be. But look, I gotta start bouncing back here, and now with easy picks too. I'm trying not to, I'm trying to still challenge myself here. So hopefully we'll bounce back.
Hey, it's a long season. I know we were just saying it's like already October and it's crazy, but there's still a lot of football left. Anything could happen, honestly.
A lot of football left. So who would like to kick off the picks?
I'll start, I guess, this week. So we'll start with my FBS lock for the week. I have Boise State over San Diego State. That's going to be my FBS lock. Boise had a tough loss last week against UTEP. They lost 27-10. I think they bounced back this week. They're at home, back in Boise on the blue turf. I think that they should beat San Diego State. It's their second conference game in the Midwest. They've already beaten New Mexico. Usually they run that conference. So I expect them to get, a conference win and bounce back after the loss last week. So that'll be my FBS lock for this week. For my FCS lock, Basil, I'm going with Fordham. Fordham over Georgetown. I really like this Fordham team. Feel like they're not getting a lot of respect, but they've been balling out this year completely. They're averaging 50 points a game, which is absolutely wild at this point in the season. They had an absolute shootout, barn burner with last week against Ohio. They ended up losing late in the game, but, they look good. And on the contrary, Georgetown, just not a good football program overall. They've scored 6 points in each of their last 2 games, 6 points each game. So, kind of trash. I think Fordham bounces back this week and gets a win over Georgetown. Yeah, so that'll be my FCS lock. Go ahead, Basil.
Yeah, no, I mean it's one of those things. Obviously, I changed hats this week because I went with a less aggressive hat because Fordham did technically lose, but in a game like that against Ohio, I mean, like, it's so hard to be upset or mad with this team. I mean, obviously, there were definitely things that went wrong. I mean, the defense could be a lot better going forward. But I mean, a couple stats for you. Fotis Kokosoulis, a long-time wide receiver for Fordham, set a record 320 receiving yards against Ohio. Tim DeMorat, 503 yards, 6 touchdowns. Right now, he's the all-time leader in pass yards, pass touchdowns, and completions at Fordham. This is the best Fordham team, and I honestly was not expecting, like, that kind of just came out of me. Like, this is probably the best Fordham team that I've watched, since the 2015, 2014 teams with Chase Edmond that were, a continuous playoff team. I mean, this is a team that is firing at all cylinders. And I mean, I don't go with Fordham for my FCS lock of the week because I want to, keep some variety going here. But I mean, that's as good of a pick as any, because Georgetown has just been a bottom feeder of the Patriot League forever. You know what I mean?
So I mean, I'm a DC guy now, and like I would love to root for Georgetown, but you just can't. They're just so bad. But yeah, I like Fordham a lot. I think that they could make a run at the Patriot League title this year. They definitely have a shot, and if they keep it up the way that they've been playing, putting up those crazy offensive stats like you just mentioned, like, who knows how far that they could go. They couldn't even make a run in the FCS playoffs. So definitely a team to watch out for and keep on your radar. And, hopefully they can, continue their success.
Yeah.
I'll jump into my other 3 picks that I have real quick. So as you guys can see up there, it's Duke -3 over Virginia this week. Another team that I think's looked really good out of the ACC. They lost to Kansas last week, but Kansas has been a really good team this year. And I can't believe that I'm saying that. I didn't ever think that I would say Kansas has a good football program, but surprisingly they do. Duke lost a tough one, close game last week. I think they bounced back at home against Virginia. Their quarterback, Riley Leonard, he's been absolutely tearing it up for them. He has the second most passing yards right now in the ACC and the highest completion percentage rating. And it's over 71%, I believe. So he's definitely been tearing it up. So I think Duke will come out on top -3 against the Cavaliers come this weekend. My second pick, I'm going to go OK State +2 against Baylor. So taking the Dogs on the road. They're going to Waco to play a really good Baylor team. Baylor has had a very interesting season this year already, obviously losing to BYU earlier in the year, bouncing back last week against a good Iowa State team. They looked really solid in that victory last week. But, I just have a feeling that OK State's going to take it. Every year that these two teams play, it's always a battle. It's, always a good game, tight game. Last year they played twice and each team won a game. Baylor ended up winning in the Big 12 championship on like the last play. There were like 20 seconds left and they stuffed OK State 4th and goal and ended up taking home the Big 12 championship. So I think OK State has that in the back of their minds. They're going to want this as a revenge game. And honestly, I think the winner of this game could potentially be returning to the Big 12 championship later this year. We saw Oklahoma lose last week, which was really surprising. So I think these are the two top dogs. I know we just mentioned Kansas. I don't think that they last that long to get to the Big 12. I may be wrong, but I think these are the two top dogs in the Big 12. And, this is a big game for both programs. So I'll take OK State there. And then my final game pick of the week is going to be Ole Miss money line over Kentucky. Another interesting game that I think will be, pretty solid, will be pretty tight. Two pretty good programs. Ole Miss is at home. This is their first SEC matchup this year against Kentucky. So I think they're going to want to come out and make a statement within the conference, get a W. They're averaging 41 points a game, which is pretty high up there. Not as high as Fordham's 50, but they're up there. And, Kentucky, they're ranked 7 right now. I think that's a little generous for them, a little too high. I mean, they did beat Florida. Yes, they played well in that game. But other than Florida, they've played Miami, Ohio, Youngstown State, and then Northern Illinois last week. And they barely squeaked by Northern Illinois, winning by like 8 points, I believe. So, I think they're a little too high to be ranked number 7. Ole Miss is at 14. I don't understand what the big discrepancy is there. So I think Ole Miss comes out and beats Kentucky. And those are my picks for the week.
You think they beat them by 7?
Because
that's the spread right now. I have Kentucky.
I would buy it down to like 6 probably.
Right.
You never know what's going to happen, right? I did the same thing last weekend with Clemson and Wake Forest, and it ended up working out for me. You just those conference games, I feel like are always tight. So I don't know. I could see it going either way, like winning by 16, 17, or having it be kind of tight.
Yeah, I was surprised that Kentucky made it to 7 in, the AP top 25, to be completely honest. Basil, what is it in the house poll?
Which school in the house poll?
Kentucky.
Let me check on that right now.
Now that you're saying it, 7 seems way too high.
It's crazy. I mean, you have Georgia and Alabama that are ahead of them in the SEC. It's like, how are they ranked that high?
But I like those picks. I really enjoy the, going back to yours. I got to ride the Fordham one as well for the FCS, even though they bit me last year against Ohio. But I love the Rams in honor of Basil. And, OK State over Baylor. I think that'll be a play to look at for the money line as well, that plus money.
So we've got Kentucky at 8 in the House Enterprise top 25 and Ole Miss at 15 in the top 25.
Damn.
There was a lot of this was a crazy top 25 this week. There was a lot of shaking up going on, especially with what happened with like Texas A&M and Arkansas and USC. So yeah, I think this will be kind of one to like even things out a little bit.
I mean, look, I think that Kentucky should be ranked higher than Ole Miss. I just think that the discrepancy of 7 to 14 or 8 to 15, whatever we have, is a little too much. I think they should be more aligned, maybe like 10, 11 around that area. And then you got to think about Tennessee too. Tennessee's 4-0, and in the AP top 25, they're ranked 8th, which is one spot behind Kentucky. So
we got them at 7.
So I don't know which. Okay, so we have it flip flopped, but I don't know why. I don't know why the AP poll is ranking Kentucky so much higher compared to these other SC teams that have played well. So it's interesting.
This will be the weekend that'll prove us wrong or prove them right. So
right,
we'll
exactly.
See. Basil, we'll swing it over to you.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I'll start off with my locks of the week. I've got Washington -3. Or did that show up there? Or
believe it did.
Yep. Oh yeah. So yeah, I got Washington -3. I think Washington is a team that I think as a House Enterprise unit might be sleeping on a little bit. I think at least in the polls, UCLA is solid. But I just think Washington is the much more put together team right now. They have, they probably have one of the better chances of contending for a Big 12 title. So I got them, at least the points on there. And for my FCS lock of the week, I've got Sacramento State money line against, I believe, Northern Colorado. This is one of those FCS teams that, you don't really hear about because not a lot of people are following FCS football, but they'll come in, play an FBS team like they did against Colorado State this year and just completely blow them out of the water. 41-10. And then they go up against Northern Iowa, who's usually, a perennial, powerhouse in FCS football. You got them, Montana State, North Dakota State, and they took them down 37-21. And when you look at their team, it's just such a well-balanced team. Their defense, just does not give up a lot of points. Their receiving unit is all like really equally talented. A lot of the production is well spread out, and I just think it's just another one of those picks where I just think people should put some money on this game so they have a reason to watch this game and get an idea of some of the real top talent that we see in FCS. Other than that, I know Jake went we haven't seen his picks yet because he hasn't come on the show yet, but he's going hard on Air Force. But I think I'm gonna stick with the Navy here. Obviously, out of the 3 service academies this year, Navy has really been struggling, and Air Force has kind of been rolling. But again, Navy plays that service academy, low down, tough, low scoring football. That's a very well equipped on the run, and I think that'll give them just enough, not to win. I think this could still be a double-digit win for Air Force. But I think they'll have just enough to cover 2 touchdowns because that seems just like a lot to me. TCU plus 9.5. They've been an excellent team so far in the Big 12, and Oklahoma coming off that loss, I think they're gonna be struggling a little bit early on. They'll probably come away with a win. They'll probably want to bounce back, but I mean TCU has always just been one of the most consistent teams in the Big 12, so I see them covering 9.5. Pretty easily. Minnesota versus Purdue is really interesting, and honestly, I have to say, it's interesting that that we're potentially criticizing our own piece here, but the football house top 25, I think all of us here should collectively apologize to Minnesota for sleeping on them so far this year and not even thinking about them for the rankings because they have just been on absolute tear. And they're going up against a Purdue team that's, not that great and is hurt right now. Purdue's quarterback, he was struggling against a team like Florida Atlantic, and so for them to go up against Minnesota just does not bode well for them. And then do we want to hold off for game of the weekend rivalry?
Yeah, we can hold off.
All right, yeah. So that's what I've got. Pretty straightforward stuff, pretty simple stuff. Just looking to bounce back this week. So, not playing it totally safe. I'm going with some tricky underdogs here, but trying to get some wins under my belt.
All right, real quick, timeout. Is Zimmer in the car? You riding dirty? What are you doing?
I am fresh off. I'm hello from ComAv in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm fresh off BU and Army men's soccer scoring 3 goals in the first half. Actually, 4 goals in the first half, and then a grand total of 0 in the second half. Riveting freaking contest.
Nice.
I'm sitting outside Sullivan's Tire on Commonwealth Ave. No place I'd rather be than making college football picks here on a Wednesday night.
I love it. Nickerson Field, is that where you were?
Oh, yeah, it was. Oh yeah.
Classic.
Regrettably, no football there anymore. That would have been cool. BU had a football team for many years, and I would have hammered they'd probably be playing, I don't know, hypothetical here, because Patriot League football, Wagon, Fordham, Patriot League, Georgetown, Patriot League, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I know. No BU football. Crazy. Wish that they did have a football program still, but
they were very good back then.
Unfortunately not. Basil, real quick, I'll just touch upon your picks. I really like TCU. I totally forgot about mentioning them in the Big 12 when I was talking about OK State and Baylor. That's another sneaky team that could make a run. We have a lot of low-key good Big 12 teams that, I feel like not a lot of people are talking about, because obviously everyone talks about the SEC, the Big 10, right? Pac-12, but there's multiple schools in the Big 12 that are doing real well this year, and TCU's been one of them. So I like that pick a lot. And as for Minnesota, I agree with you. I think we have kind of overlooked them a lot. They've been playing really well. They got a big win against Michigan State a couple weeks ago, and I believe this week is their homecoming. So they'll want to ball out against Purdue. Purdue's been a disappointment for sure this year. I had big expectations for them in the preseason, especially when they came out opening week against Penn State, and they looked pretty good. But I think it's going to be a long year for them.
Yeah, the Big 12 is really interesting right now, like you said. It's kind of similar to what we're seeing in the Pac-12. I mean, obviously UCLA and USC are two of the biggest names and financial pieces of the Pac-12. But lately in football, they haven't really been like the consistent contenders. But Oklahoma and now Texas, as they keep climbing. They've been on top for so long, and so a lot of these teams I think are going to try and cash in on that power vacuum that's coming in quickly, and use these games against Oklahoma, like we saw with Kansas State beating Oklahoma, as essentially like part of their recruitment portfolio. You know what I mean? Like, look, the Big 12 is still here. We're still beating those guys that think they're going to a better conference, and we're still here playing great football. And I think TCU, which already has been established as a pretty solid piece of the Big 12 for a long time. I believe they made the playoff, like one of the first 2 or 3 playoffs, about 7 or 8 years ago. I think they're a perfect candidate to kind of catapult themselves in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, like BYU is planning to go to the Big 12. That's a great school to pick up as an independent to go to the Big 12 for them once Oklahoma and Texas leaves. Like, that's just going to make it even more competitive. So I think the Big 12 is going to be all right. Like, at first, in the offseason when the big news story came out that Texas and Oklahoma were leaving, it was like, oh no, like, is the Big 12 just going to crumble? But I think there are some solid programs in that conference that are going to be competitive, and it might even like make it more interesting and fun to watch.
Yeah. And I mean, also think about Cincinnati's coming in too. I mean, they kind of took a dip this season, but they've been on the up for probably 4 or 5 years now. So it's
Cincinnati
really
can play with the big dogs. They can play with those, those power teams. And yeah, I agree with that sentiment, Basil.
Yeah, it's tough this year too, because I think I was listening to a podcast the other day. You lose. That's one of those programs that you can't afford to lose the talent they did this offseason, right? I mean, Desmond Ridder, obviously, and Sauce Gardner. Those are some two top tier guys, and it's a real challenge. I'm curious to see what happens these next couple of years now, because we've already seen the product. I don't want to say it's bad, right? But it's certainly taken a bit of a fall from grace from where they were last year in the top 5 consistently in the nation.
Yeah, I agree with that, Zimmer. They did lose a lot of talent, but the one thing that they do have going for them is they still have Luke Fickell, right, as their head coach. Yeah. He has proven he is one of the elite coaches. I think he's, after you see these guys like Saban and, Dabo for years just dominate, who knows how long. I know they're all signing these 10-year deals that are crazy, but who knows how long they're actually going to stick around, right? And I think Luke Fickell is, hopefully stays at Cincinnati and tries to build that program and doesn't jump ship for, a larger program. But I think he could be, one of those next generation coaches that we're, talking about all the time.
Right on. All right, Zim, time for your picks.
All right, let's do this. I went with the Will Tondo special of doing like 6 picks this week. I liked a few things on the board, wanted to take them. We declared Boston College frauds a few weeks ago, and I'm so in on that. And I think Louisville was actually declared a fraud too, but I'll take them on a 15-point spread. I just think Louisville is a better of a bad team than Boston College is, and I don't even necessarily think that Louisville's a bad team. I think they'll beat this spread here, even though it's rather steep. Iowa State and Kansas. I don't know if anyone has chosen Kansas tonight because they're 4-0. I talked a lot of shit about them a couple weeks ago and said, wow, this is an awful football team. I think I might have been wrong this time. So even though they're off to a really good start, I think Iowa State's earned my respect. We talked about this a few weeks ago in our trophy case game. They've got a lot of talent on the field. They had a great win over Iowa. It was nasty. It was ugly. And I think they can do the same thing to Kansas. They can out-ugly them, and, they'll be able to put some quality points on the board. I'm also going to take the under in this game. I know Kansas likes to score a bunch of points. I think 58 is just a bit too high here. That's where I stand there. Take it home at the last 3. Air Force minus 14. Basil said what I was going to say, but I'll omit the second part, basically. How Air Force has been rolling. They look great. Navy, I just don't think has it. They have been the worst of the 3 service schools, as you mentioned as well. Delaware, don't look now. They're 4-0. And now they're going to play Towson. I think I'm riding Delaware money line until they prove me wrong. Here's one that I really like, and this is Indiana plus 5.5 over Nebraska. Yes, this is on Nebraska's home turf, but people forget, they're just a few weeks out from firing Mr. Frost. And I think to be getting 5.5 points, the jury's out. Is Indiana a great football team? No, they're not. I can't put my money with Nebraska here, though. I think that's just not a wise move. So Indiana plus 5.5. I think you can even consider the money line, too. FBS lock of the week, we will go A&M. They are underdogs against Mississippi State. Did anyone have this or no?
No.
Nope. I don't think it's been discussed just yet. I don't know, guys. A&M, we talked about it last week. Yeah, 23-21. Yes, they were given a gift at the end of the game. I understand all of that, but, they won at the end of the day. I think it was Tondo that mentioned their back was against the wall. Jimbo Fisher, there was going to be some concerns about what's next for him if he doesn't win that game, and they won. So I think they've got a little bit of a pep in their step, and I think they keep the momentum rolling, get the win over unranked Mississippi State. And then FCS, the lock is Rhode Island money line. I'm very pumped about that one as well. Yes, Rhode Island lost their last 2. One was to Delaware, one was to Pitt. So I'm going to ride Rhode Island as well. I think they're a good football team. I think they're going to take on the Brown Bears and beat them. because Rhode Island has proven they are the best football team in the Ocean State.
I think pretty good picks. I don't disagree with anything that you have there. I think those are all solid. The Indiana-Nebraska game, that is going to be definitely interesting. But I'm going to jump on what you said, Zim. I just don't think, and I've said this before in previous weeks, I just think Nebraska is complete shambles right now for the rest of the year until they hit the total reset button in the offseason, bring in a new coach. I don't think that they're going to win many games, if any. So I like Indiana to cover and potentially also winning also.
F. Scott Frost, I put my faith in him early in the year, and he anyone affiliated with the Nebraska program is getting a no vote from me.
Zim, do you buy into the superstition of Big 12 unders? I noticed you took one on your card this week, but do you believe that they're as consistent as a lot of seasoned bettors say they are?
Oh man, I got to look into that. I really don't know. It's maybe subliminally. Maybe I'm seeing that on TikTok and Twitter everywhere, and maybe that's influencing my decisions like subconsciously. But I'm not like, let's hammer this Big 12 under.
I just see it every week on Twitter, and Scott Van Pelt's a big proponent of it too.
Oh, he loves
if I
that
recall
stuff.
Correctly. Yeah, he's it's a weird hack that probably doesn't go the way you want whenever you want to buy into it, but it's always something interesting for me.
It is interesting too, because I feel like a lot of Big 12 programs, they usually have explosive offenses, right? But then once they play each other, it's like they also have unreal defenses, and they just don't put up points against one another. But when they play out of conference, they'll annihilate teams. But when they're playing each other, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, I mean, especially like Bedlam too. Like, I mean, both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State have regardless of their quality on like the overall landscape, it's like they have always been like excellent, quick, dual threat quarterbacks. So it's just weird how it's just been so consistent in conference play. But yeah.
Right on. All right. Let's see what I got cooking. I'm a big component of the underdog this week. Not sure about the money lines at these, but definitely covering the spreads. To start it off, my FBS lock of the week, Rutgers plus 40 in the Big Ten matchup against Ohio State. Ohio State can put up the points. We've seen it. I'm riding more on Rutgers defense not to give up a 40-point difference in this one. I bit myself in the ass last week when I said Georgia was going to cover minus 45 against Kent State. I cannot make that same mistake again, so I'm going to take Rutgers plus 40. But on the flip side, for my FCS lock of the week, whatever Syracuse spread is against Wagner, I'm going to hammer. Wagner just does not have it. Syracuse has surprised me. It hasn't been released yet. It's probably going to be anywhere from like 30 to 40. I love that. I think Syracuse takes this one without a doubt. But going back to my regular picks and the underdogs, I like plus money on pretty much everything. Kentucky plus 7 over Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss will still win that game, and we've already talked about that with Cole's picks, but I like the number more at like 6. So I think they can cover within the touchdown. Texas Tech plus 8 over Kansas State. Kansas State, congratulations. You made it into the top 25. I think it's going to be short-lived. Texas Tech proving what they did last week against Texas. I think this is a very winnable game with them. I like the plus 8 easily here. And then Wake Forest plus 7 against Florida State. Again, a 22-23 matchup. Was very impressed on how Wake Forest pulled out against Clemson. I think this is another favorable spot for them. My one skeptical pick, but looking at the trends with the scoring and the defense, Alabama, Arkansas under 60. I think this is a spot where it could go either way, but Arkansas's defense does show some favor in this matchup. So I think it's going to be a low scoring game. Alabama still comes out. And then I have Minnesota -12 over Purdue. Not too much confidence in this Purdue team, so I'll take Minnesota there.
I'm riding Minnesota too. And Basil, I was offended when you said nobody backed Minnesota on this show. I backed them at least once in these first couple of weeks. I think the Gophers have it. You know what it was?
I didn't see them under top 25 though, so that's what I was talking about.
I know, you're right. They might, if they win this game, they're making an appearance on it next week.
Oh, no doubt.
I like the Texas Tech pick. They've played very well this year. They've squeaked out a lot of close games. They beat Houston a couple weeks ago in overtime. Obviously, last week they played very well down the stretch against Texas. Were able to force that fumble in overtime, get the victory, upset them. Their only loss right now is against NC State, and NC State is number 10. And I know we'll get into this with the game of the week, but for that to be their only loss, that's pretty good. So I definitely like the Texas Tech pick. And Will, I agree with you. Syracuse, another team that, we were trashing on early at the year. It's a basketball school, all this, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? They're 4-0. And, I think that they could surprise a lot of people in the ACC this year. I wouldn't be shocked if they upset Clemson when they play them.
Damn.
Syracuse, I think the metrics now, because at the beginning of the year they were 10-4 against the spread, and I'm pretty sure, like going into last year, and I'm pretty sure this year to start off they're 4-0 against the spread as well, because I think they've been either a very slim underdog, or a very slim favorite, or a big underdog in all 4 of their first games. So
yeah, I mean,
Syracuse is a great team to bet on with the spread.
Yeah, I mean, they've had some impressive wins. They beat Louisville week 1, and I thought that was a fluke. They actually handled them pretty well. Louisville, usually a good football team. I was surprised by that. Week 2, they played Connecticut, and they absolutely smoked them. Obviously, they're going to beat Connecticut. Everyone expected that. But then the last 2 weeks, I think, have been, pretty telling in how their season's going to go, because, they squeaked one out against Purdue. That was a battle. They ended up beating them. And then last week, they ended up finding a way to win against Virginia. So, I think this is a big week for them. Wagner, this will be a tune-up game in the middle of the year, which is good. And then they start to get it into the nitty-gritty of their schedule. After Wagner, they have NC State, they have Clemson, they have Notre Dame, they have Pitt, they have Florida State, Wake Forest. Those games are all going to be tough games to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if they come out above 500 in those games.
I agree. So we shall see. Let's head to the game of the week, which just so coincidentally is the rivalry game. Basil, what's on the slate this week for the duo?
Yeah, so this is probably our best rivalry game so far. A lot of the ones that we've been talking about, there were a couple of interstate ones, that which are always fun, but this is when we really get into some interconference, interdivisional rivalries that just go back a very long time. So this week we've got the Textile Bowl between the Clemson Tigers and the NC State Wolfpack. This is a really interesting, matchup for a lot of reasons, a lot of history behind it. First contested in 1899, but a named trophy since 1981. And it's called the Textile Bowl, due mainly to, textiles being, a major export of both states for a very long time. And also, probably because of this, both these schools are 2 of the largest textile programs for universities in the country. And I was doing some Googling today just to figure out what that really means, and it kind of means everything. Manufacturing, fashion design, economics, everything you need to know. So both these schools are competing on the football field, and just for any prospective textile students. In terms of the actual game itself, in terms of history, this has been one of those matchups where one school really does kind of do a lot better than the other. Clemson leads this one 59-29 and one tie all time. In the past 10, Clemson has won 9, but that last one, the most recent one in 2021, in Raleigh, North Carolina, was probably the most exciting that we've seen in a very long time, as unranked NC State took down, the first year without, Trevor Lawrence, DJ Uiagalelei, his first year at Clemson, kind of struggling a little bit, lost to NC State 27-21 in double overtime. I was watching the highlights from last year's game, kind of reliving that. That last touchdown was absolutely crazy. So, as much as Clemson does not want to call this one a legitimate rivalry, given, what happened last year and how good both of these schools are right now, this is the first time in a long time that they've both been ranked in the top 25 heading into this matchup. The stakes are high, especially on the Wolfpack side. So it's gonna be a good one for sure.
That's Talking Textiles with Sam Basil, more than just a football betting.
I like that segment, Talking Textiles.
So, Basil, what do you have for your matchup in this? What's your play for this game?
Yeah, so as much as I think it's super fun that NC State is coming in really hot into this matchup, I'm gonna have to give my pick to Clemson. I have them right now. I've got them at winning 35-21, and let me tell you why. So, NC State, I love that they're good right now. I love when these North Carolina schools are really good at football, the UNCs, the Dukes of the world. But when looking at NC State and their record so far, I don't want to put them on full fraud alert. I think that would be completely unfair to do. But I think when you look at Devin Leary and his performances in the first 4 games, while good, there are some signs of trouble when going up against a big ranked opponent. The only game so far this year in which he's thrown more than 20 completions was against UConn last week. In the first 3 games of the season, he threw 17, 16, and 15 completed passes, respectfully. They only beat ECU by 1 point in a thriller. And I just think Clemson's going to come in. They're bouncing back. They've kind of come together after, trying to figure each other out, last season. And I think they're going to come in and they're going to give NC State a tough time. So, and it's in Clemson, if I'm not mistaken this year. Yes, it is in Clemson. So, I mean, just a tough place to play. It's going to be a wake-up call for Devin Leary. They're still going to be NC State's still going to be on a good track. But, I think this is going to be them kind of, getting knocked out of contention against the division opponent for the ACC championship game.
I agree that Clemson will win this game, but I do feel Devin Leary and the Wolfpack cover the spread. I understand that the game's in Death Valley. I understand college game day atmosphere, and Clemson is by far the more favorable team in this matchup, but I do like the matchup. I don't want to bite myself in the ass and say that they will cover this, but that's where my money's going to be. I'm just going to leave it at that so I don't dig myself into the hole. NC State covers the spread. Clemson takes the win. I don't think it'll be back-to-back victories for the Wolfpack, but they at least cover the +7.
Yeah, I'm going to hop with you, Will. So I think NC State does cover 6.5. I'm going to take Clemson to win just because it's in Death Valley. Like you said, I don't see them losing 2 years in a row to NC State. But, we have to give NC State the respect that they deserve, right? I think it'll be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be a defensive battle. I'm going to take Clemson to win 20-14. So cutting it close with the 6.5, but I think they win by 4 to 6 range. We'll take them, and that's my pick for the game of the week.
I don't like to fantasize the how the game ends and things like that, but I've got 24-21 Clemson. Potential walk-off field goal. I think it could be that close that it goes down to the last possession. And had faith in DJ Uiagalelei starting the year. I really don't as much anymore. Clemson sort of, you ask me right now, they're on the outside looking in for the college football playoff. They need a win like this to get them, over that hump. Maybe this will go a little bit of a way, but I think 24-21 Clemson. Don't want to repeat anything that's already been said.
Yeah, I would second that, Jake. I also think they're on the outside looking in because Wake Forest last week gave them all that they could handle. And honestly, Wake Forest probably should have won that game. I think they stole it, Clemson. I think they got away with one. And had they lost, they might have been labeled as a fraud. Who knows? So I do think they will win this game because, last week obviously was a close battle. And if they lose this week, that doesn't look good for them and their playoff chances. But, NC State's definitely going to make it a game. It's going to be fun to watch for sure. And real quick, just looking at the ACC standings, Clemson, Florida State, Syracuse, and NC State are all in the same division of the ACC. So only one of those teams are going to make the ACC championship game. So right now you'd have, if the season ended today, it would be Clemson versus Virginia Tech in the ACC championship game, which just seems unfair. You have Virginia Tech, Duke, UNC, and Pitt on the other side compared to all these other teams that are just totally tearing it apart in the ACC Atlantic division.
I don't know if this is the right time to bring up this debate, but I mean, does that kind of, add to the idea that, that we've been seeing in some conferences that maybe it might be time to eliminate divisions and conferences? If I can be honest, I'm going to say no. But I mean, that is a bad example. I don't like
the way you just teed that up.
That was the bait and switch.
Yeah, it's not.
I don't think it is. I just don't think it is. And it's just like a debate I've been wanting to cook up on the house for a long time, not just with football, but just with sports in general, with college football, but just with sports in general. But I don't know, but also that's the worst example I could bring up. So maybe I'll just shut up for now and wait for
save it for another day.
I'll wait for this blog because
it's coming. Don't worry, it's coming.
You literally just teed it up. You're like, oh, isn't that crazy that Clemson's a heavy favorite in this division? And
but also let's keep the division.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we could get into a whole nother discussion about that.
I will be, as Will said, I will be anxiously awaiting the blog, Basil, and I can't wait. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
Well, looking across the top 25, we mentioned a few of those games already, but some other games to keep an eye out on. Michigan, number 4 seed, is -11 over Iowa. Utah is -10 over Oregon State, who just kept it close with USC, obviously, last week. Penn State is a 25-point favorite over Northwestern. We talked about Texas A&M and Mississippi State. Georgia is a 28-point favorite over Missouri. Pitt is a 22-point favorite over Georgia Tech. USC is a 25-point favorite over Arizona State. And then Oregon is a 17-point favorite over Stanford. Any teams in that top 25 looking to, looking to either move up in the standings or they're working their way out because of a loss this week? Anything in particular stands out to you, gents?
Yeah, I don't want to repeat myself from earlier, but I just think the Ole Miss Kentucky game, I think potentially there's some room for Ole Miss to move up significantly and Kentucky to fall back if Ole Miss is able to pull that off.
Yeah. I mean, as of now, I think, I don't want to speak for the future, but the top 4 I feel like is set in stone. I feel like that's our playoff. I hate to say it.
Unless USC can make a run, right? Something could happen down the line between Alabama and Georgia in the SEC championship, or, someone could upset them along the way. But, I think if the way the teams look right now, if they just keep rolling like they have been, I would agree with you. USC probably is the odd man out, unfortunately, and you have the two SEC giants again against, the Big Ten. And it'll be interesting because there's some good rivalries between Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State and Michigan.
I mean, is there anything in the Ohio State-Michigan game that you guys think like one school can do to completely just knock the other one out, or do you think both of them are just going to head in too good to fall out?
I think the way I see it is like they're going to have that matchup where one team wins, and then probably the Big Ten championship, the other team's going to win, and then just they'll cancel each other out in those standings. I think that's how I play. I can't confidently right now say who's going to win one side or the other, but I don't think the series goes 2-0. If the stars align and they match up.
Yeah.
I'd concur. I will say, and I'm going to get kicked out of the Sullivan's Tire parking lot, so I'll leave with just a quick bomb drop. Penn State, they have to win now because they're 4-0. They're off to a great start. You know what the next few weeks are? It's Michigan, Minnesota, and Ohio State. So if you want any hopes of anything, I'm talking bowl games, whatever championship you have in mind, they've got to just throttle Northwestern. It's a 25-point spread. Cover it, beat the crap out of them, carry all the momentum you can to these next 3 weeks because it's going to be really tough. I mean, you can't really get much tougher than that in the Big Ten right now. Way Minnesota's playing, you got to think that's, in theory, just as big of a challenge in different ways as Michigan and Ohio State.
Yeah, I agree. And not to go back to the whole division talk, but Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State all in the same division. So they won't see each other in the Big Ten championship. So that's actually good for Michigan and Ohio State because whoever the loser of that game is, the winner's obviously going to go on to the Big Ten championship and play someone from the other division. And if they get knocked off, you don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot in that equation that things could change, but just an interesting little take there. Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, all undefeated, all in the same division.
Right on. All right, so those are their picks. Those are our plays. We will catch you all next week. We got Cole Hughes, Sam Basil, Jake Zimmer, and myself, Will Tondo. The Football House, presented by House Enterprise. Week 5. We'll bring some winners. We'll win some plays, and we'll catch you next week. Take it easy.